A low hum thrummed through Kara Miles's bones as she stepped off the shuttle's ramp onto the polished obsidian floor of Cerulean Station. The scent of recycled air mingled with cold metal and ozone. It was nothing like the scrubland air of her homeworld, Herodor IV. Here in the Frontier Corps premier training hub, every footstep echoed like a drumbeat heralding a new beginning. Kara pulled her regulation jumpsuit tighter at the collar, the insignia of a green bar recruit, freshly ironed onto her chest. Around her, seasoned officers strode with confident purpose, their boots clicking against the floor in precise unison. She swallowed back a flicker of doubt. She was just another human recruit in a sea of veterans who'd faced cosmic storms, Xanthian worm swarms, and the unimaginable horrors lurking beyond the rim. But Kara had volunteered for something far more dangerous, bonding with the apex predator they called Ravager. The transport bay was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, punctuated only by the dull glow of emergency strips. At the far end, behind reinforced crystalline plating, stood Ravager's containment cell. The creature's silhouette was both beautiful and terrifying, towering, lithe, and coiled like a spring ready to strike. Rumor said its genome was threaded, with half a dozen extinct apex species, and that its intelligence was shockingly high. To the core, it was a living weapon. To Kara, it was her assignment. A lieutenant with a scar tracing his jaw approached, clipboard in hand. "Recruit Miles," he said, voice low. "You know the protocol. You have 1 hour to establish initial rapport. No weapons, no coercion, just you and the beast." He tapped the cell's energy barrier. "This fails. You fail. And if you fail, well, you won't want to know." Kara met his gaze steadily. "Understood, sir." Her heart hammered as she stepped past the barrier's edge. The crowd of onlookers, a mix of curious recruits and skeptical officers, fell silent. All eyes were on her. She raised her gloved hand and pressed her palm flat against the transparent wall. On the other side, Ravager paused, shifting its weight on clawed toes. Its scales flickered like oil in the dim light, and its eyes, deep amber flecked with metallic gold, locked onto hers. Something ancient and unreadable glowed in those eyes, and Kara felt a ripple of something unfamiliar. Not fear, but awe. Slowly, the energy field flickered off with a hiss. Kara exhaled, her braids swaying behind her as she stepped into the cell. The air here was cooler, tinged with ozone and a faint metallic tang. She kept her posture relaxed, arms at her sides. "I'm Kara," she said softly. "I'm not your master. Just your partner." Ravager's nostrils flared, breath billowing in slow, measured puffs that smelled of iron and dust. It stepped toward her, head cocked at a strange angle. Its tail lashed once, tapping the floor like a pendulum measuring time. Kara reminded herself to breathe. Every muscle in the creature's body coiled with power. It could crush her in one swipe. Yet it hesitated. "Listen," she continued, voice gentle. "I know you've been through experiments, drills, prisons. They trained you to obey, to kill. But I'm different." She reached into a pocket and withdrew a small hydrogel ration. "Food's the oldest language, right?" She offered it palm up. Ravager's head dipped until its muzzle was even with her hand. With a delicate nibble, an almost dainty gesture, it accepted the gel pack. Kara felt her chest lighten. A simple act of trust, but monumental here. A clang echoed through the bay. 2 soldiers had dropped a crate outside. Heads turned, the moment fractured. Ravager's ears twitched. Kara placed a steady hand on its scaled flank. "Ignore them," she murmured. "Right now it's you and me." As the distraction subsided, she guided Ravager toward the cell's exit. The lieutenant's voice crackled over her comm, clipped with surprise. "Recruit Miles. You may proceed to Dock 4's training gate, and good luck." The gate swung open and the duo emerged into Cerulean Station's labyrinthine corridors. White lights arched overhead, illuminating service ducts, maintenance hatches, and the occasional hollow advertisement for recruitment bonuses. Every gaze followed Kara and her guardian as they walked, some curious, some scornful, others awestruck. by the sight of a human with a fully grown apex predator at heel. Navigating the corridors, Kara noted the practical design: retractable gangways, emergency alcoves, and reinforced blast doors. It was a fortress in microcosm, capable of withstanding orbital bombardment. Yet here she was, a single human, moving alongside the embodiment of untamed power. They reached the training gate, a massive archway carved from luminescent alloy. A panel flared green and slid aside. Beyond lay the first of Cerulean's infamous gauntlet courses. Kara's pulse throbbed. This was where she'd prove herself, the culmination of her gamble. She turned to Ravager. The beast's neck curved, eyes holding hers with an almost empathetic warmth. No growl, no snarl, only expectancy. Kara raised her chin. "Let's show them what we can do." Ravager emitted a low rumble, a sound that reverberated through Kara's chest. Together they stepped into the unknown, the station's artificial sky warming above them. The real trial had just begun, and the galaxy would never look at a human in her Hound the same way again. The reinforced bulkheads of Cerulean Station's primary training dome slid open with a hiss, revealing a landscape engineered to test every facet of team synergy under lethal conditions. Kara, Miles, and Ravager paused at the threshold, the hum of gravity regulators and heat vents washing over them like a battle horn. Beyond the gate lay a gauntlet of shifting terrain, pillars of superheated plasma, cordoned zero-gravity chambers, and swarms of patrol drones programmed for ruthless efficiency. Kara's breath caught. She glanced at Ravager, its obsidian scales, glinting under the dome's fluorescent sky. Even at rest, the creature radiated power, yet it stood poised, muscles coiled, eyes fixed on her. Kara pressed her gloved hand to her earcom. "Phase 1 check," she said softly. "Ready when you are." Ravager answered with a low growl that reverberated in Kara's chest like distant thunder. Together, they stepped forward as the dome's central beacon flashed green. Molten pillars, jagged columns of molten ceruleum lobbed waves of superheated energy in unpredictable patterns. Veteran teams hurtled between blasts, but a single misstep meant incineration. Kara sprinted, hips low, as scorching heat seared the air. Behind her, Ravager bounded in perfect sync, its powerful legs clearing the pillars with feline grace. When a pillar erupted directly in their path, Kara dove laterally. Ravager twisted mid-air to shield her, its tail sweeping the molten spray aside. The heat licked at Kara's suit, but Ravager's massive frame bore the brunt, allowing her to scramble back to her feet unscathed. Zero-gravity chambers. The next section depressed atmospheric pressure, and Kara's boots disengaged from the floor. Sections of the dome blinked out, creating floating obstacles, metal grids, spinning rings, and razor-sharp panels drifting in 3 dimensions. Kara calibrated her inertia jets and pushed off a bulkhead. She drifted toward a narrow bypass only to find a rotating blade slicing the gap in half. She hesitated. Too late. But Ravager was already there. In a feat of predatory precision, it arched its back, catching Kara in the crook of its foreleg, and flipping them both through the blade's arc to safety on the other side. Kara's heart leapt. For a wild huntress, Ravager moved with uncanny protectiveness. Drone Arena. The final segment unleashed a horde of combat drones, sleek automatons bristling with miniaturized railguns and shock claws. The other teams formed loose phalanxes, firing indiscriminately. Bullets arced toward Kara and Ravager, but the duo moved as one. Kara targeted the drone's sensor arrays, firing pinpoint shots while Ravager stalked through the hail of fire, jaws clamping onto drone chassis and snapping them apart like toys. A massive drone, twice the size of its cohorts, detected them and charged, its Gatling barrels spinning to life. Kara dove behind Ravager's flank, sliding in Ravager's protective shadow. With a deafening roar, Ravager lunged, jaws snapping around the drone's core. Sparks flew as it ripped wires and, circuits free, then flung the inert husk aside. Crossing the finish, alarm bells rang as the final barrier descended. Kara and Ravager sprinted the last stretch together. Kara's lungs burned. Remnant scorch marks marred the floor. She reached the finish platform just as Ravager's clawed paw touched down beside hers. the barrier sealed with a hydraulic thud. Silence reigned for a breath, then a ripple of stunned applause grew into full-throated cheers. Officers and recruits alike rose, some stamping their boots, others pumping fists. Kara's chest heaved with exhaustion and exhilaration. She glanced at Ravager, whose chest heaved like hers, tongue lolling in a pant. Lieutenant Saren's voice crackled over her comm. "Recruit Miles, Ravager, unprecedented performance. You've set a new station record." Kara's jaw almost unhinged. "Copy that, sir." She reached out and laid a hand on Ravager's scaled foreleg. The beast dipped, its head amber eyes soft with approval. Together they had conquered Cerulean's trial by fire. Kara realized with a surge of pride that she wasn't just a recruit accepted by the apex predator. She was its leader, its partner. And in the gauntlet of iron and flame, they had proven that no force in the frontier could stand against their bond. Night had fallen over Cerulean Station's outer hull, but inside the observation deck the artificial sky churned with violet clouds and distant galaxies. Kara Miles stood beside the panoramic viewport. Ravager crouched at her feet like a silent gargoyle. The hum of the station felt distant here, nothing but the steady pulse of engineered life and the soft hiss of the air scrubbers. She offered Ravager a hydrogel ration, wrapping her fingers around the pouch and holding it out. The beast's muzzle lowered. It sniffed, then accepted the ration with a gentle nip, careful not to tear the pack. Kara let her hand rest on its scaled snout, marveling at the warmth beneath her glove. "We did good today," she whispered. "They saw what we can do together." Ravager emitted a low rumble that Kara chose to take for satisfaction. In the weeks since their trial by fire, whispers had spread, the human recruit whom the apex predator obeyed. Some officers applauded them, others tut-tutted that Kara would be the creature's undoing. But here, under the fabricated stars, the world felt wide and open, just Kara and her companion against the void. A shrill klaxon shattered the moment. Kara's heart leapt. The station-wide alert meant one thing: intruders. She checked her comm display. Section Theta, Dock 11, HFY cargo hold usually used for supply runs. Never a strategic target. Her jaw tightened. "Ravager," she said, voice firm. "Let's move." They raced down empty corridors, the staccato alarm bouncing off the walls. Servos ground as bulkheads sealed behind them. Kara snagged a compact pulse pistol from her belt but left it holstered. Ravager's presence was weapon enough, and she trusted its senses more than any sensor array the station boasted. At Dock 11, smoke curled from ruptured containers and the air tasted of burned polymer. Raider silhouettes, hulking figures in patched armor, milled around a shipment of experimental grav crystals. The Outer Rim Raiders, desperate opportunists who'd tracked the legends of Ravager. Kara pressed herself against the bulkheads, edge heart-hammering. One raider hefted a grav crystal, eyes glinting greedily. Kara slipped forward. "Down," she murmured. Ravager's shoulders dipped. Then, with lethal grace, it lunged. The raider barely had time to spin before Ravager's forelegs slammed into him, sending him sprawling across the deck. Metal groaned as crates toppled, unleashing a cascade of debris. The other raiders turned, weapons raised. Laser bolts sizzled through the smoke. Kara dashed forward, sliding behind Ravager's flank. She swept through the wreckage, prop pistol drawn, disabling a raider's blaster with a precise shot to the targeting array. Sparks flew. The raider fell back, clutching his helmet in shock. Ravager roared, a sound so deep it rattled the bulkhead. It vaulted into the fray, jaws snapping around another attacker's thigh. Leather and armor shredded as the beast shook its head, sending the raider spinning like a rag doll. The remaining raiders hesitated, horror on their faces as they stared at the predator and the human guiding it. Kara seized her chance. She sprinted to the grav crystal pile and activated the emergency lockdown. Hydraulic clamps bit into the crates, securing the crystals and cutting power to the raiders' makeshift power packs. Instantly, their weapons went cold. The raiders dropped to their knees. Silence fell, broken only by Ravager's labored breathing. and Kara's steady footsteps as she approached. She placed a hand on Ravager's neck, soothing the adrenaline-fueled tremors in its scales. Then, she turned to the kneeling raiders. "Leave," she said, voice ringing, "and never come back." Trembling, they scrambled to their feet and fled through the smoke and debris. Kara watched them go, then exhaled, the tension draining from her shoulders. She knelt beside Ravager and offered her cheek against its warm flank. The beast lowered its massive head, nudging her gently as if to check she was unharmed. A soft chime signaled secure status. Dock 11 was safe. Kara activated her comm. "Lieutenant Saren, intruders neutralized, crystals secured, no friendly casualties." Static crackled. Then his voice came through, laced with incredulous relief. "Good work, Miles. Command wants a full report, after you get Ravager decontaminated." "Copy," she replied. But before she rose, she ran a hand along the ridged plates of Ravager's neck. "You saved my life," she murmured. I think you trust me now." The beast's amber eyes softened, its pupils widening in a gesture that was almost affectionate. As the decontamination team arrived, Kara stepped aside and removed her glove, inspecting a faint scorch on her palm. It was nothing compared to the void of loneliness she'd carried into the station. Here, on cerulean metal and under synthetic skies, she had found more in Ravager than an asset. She had found a friend, a guardian, perhaps a kindred spirit. In the days that followed, command logs would record a flawless response to a security breach. They would commend the human recruit and remark on the effectiveness of the Apex unit. But Kara knew the truth. The bond they had forged in blood and fire was beyond any report's reach. It was etched into their souls and into the memory of Cerulean Station itself. Orders arrived on a silver data pulse. Ravager was to be reassigned to high-security orbital prison Exarch 9 by week's end. Kara Miles stared at the cold text, the station's artificial daylight dimming behind her eyes. Exarch 9 was a fortress, its cells forged from hyperalloy and quantum locks, its wards rumored to nullify even Ravager's bioenergetic field. If she obeyed, her companion would be caged for life. In the barracks, whispers crackled like static. Some recruits cheered Command's decision. Ravager was too dangerous to roam free. Others cast uneasy glances at Kara, the human who'd bent the apex predator to her will. They didn't know the savagery that had been forced into Ravager's veins to shape it into a weapon. They hadn't seen how its massive head would rest gently against Kara's shoulder in quiet moments. Kara slipped back into the observation deck, where Ravager lounged like a dormant colossus, amber eyes half closed. She knelt beside him, her voice a hush. "They'll take you away, I won't let them." Ravager's ears flicked and it emitted a soft rumble of agreement, its version of a promise. That night she rallied the few recruits who'd volunteered, in secret. Lieutenant Drax, ex-smuggler turned medic, Sergeant Lin, a veteran of the Vega skirmishes, and Naven, a trainee hacker with a knack for bypassing military-grade firewalls. In an unused maintenance shaft beneath Dock 7 they pored over schematics pulled from Station Command's network. Red lines traced the route from Ravager's containment cell through the labyrinth of service tunnels, up to the central control tower. "Security drones will rotate every 4 minutes, Naven murmured, fingers dancing over his wrist-linked console. "But I can loop their feeds for 60 seconds, it's our window." Lynn tapped her comm earpiece. "Suit up in stealth gear. No weapons. Just you, Ravager, and our comm codes. Any gunfire will bring the station down on us." At 0300 hours, when most lights dimmed and the station slipped into its artificial sleep cycle, they moved. Kara's heart thundered as she led Ravager into the maintenance shaft. The beast slithered through the narrow corridor, as silent as a shadow. Sparks arced overhead where power conduits had been severed. The air smells of ozone and grease. They reached the first checkpoint, a reinforced blast door with biometric scanners. Drax slid forward, placing his hand on the reader. The door hissed open. Kara squeezed Ravager's broad shoulder. The next door yielded to Naven's cracking codes. Down labyrinthine passages they crept, past locked cargo holds and dormant engineering drones. At one turn, A lone patrol bot materialized. Ravager froze, then sank low. Kara whispered, "Ignore." Dorsey and the bot's sensors swept over them without alarm. Naven's code loop held. At the heart of the station, the control tower loomed, a squat turret crowned with hollow antennae. Inside, a cadre of officers monitored every corridor. Kara swallowed. This was the moment of no return. She pressed Ravager's flank, and with a guttural growl, he sprang. The massive beast tore through the steel door like paper. Officers scrambled, phaser rifles raised, but Ravager moved faster than wiring could relay a shot. It swept its tail, disarming the nearest trooper, then pinned another against the console with one clawed foreleg. Kara dashed in, pulling the stunned officers aside as Lynn and Drax sealed the doors behind them. Navin's voice crackled over her comm. "Tower's ours, locking down all external airlocks. No one in, no one out." In the sudden hush, Kara climbed the spiral stairs to the observation deck overlooking Dock 4. She pressed her palm against the convoluted control interface. The hollow map of Cerulean Station blazed into focus, all its corridors and subdecks aglow. She keyed in the override. Announcements echoed through the station's PA. By order of Lieutenant Kara Miles, Frontier Corps personnel are to report to designated safe zones. All hostile units are to stand down. Ravager lumbered up beside her, its presence filling the chamber. Kara exhaled, lifting her voice to carry across the network. Cerulean Station belongs to no one who cages the innocent. To those who follow me, you have your orders. To those who stand against us, leave now. Moments later, alarms blared anew, this time from the lower decks where Loyalist forces scrambled. But with the tower sealed and the station's external access locked, no reinforcements could break in. Down in Dock 4, Kara and Ravager watched as shuttles prepared for orbit were commandeered by allies in stealth suits. Together, they would slip off-grid, free to choose their own path. Kara placed a gloved hand on Ravager's neck. "We're fugitives now," she said, voice steady. "But as long as we stand together, no chain can hold us." Ravager's roar echoed through the steel corridors, equal parts triumph and defiance. In that moment, Kara understood. The bond they'd forged was stronger than any order, deeper than any chain. And as the rebel recruits boarded the last shuttle, Kara led Ravager toward their new destiny, into the dark between the stars, where freedom waited. The shuttle's retro thrusters flared as it breached Elysia Major's atmosphere, trailing a plume of cobalt blue ion discharge. Below, vast emerald canopies stretched to horizons fringed with violet-tinted mountains. Kara Miles pressed her, forehead to the viewport. Ravager curled at her feet, nostrils flaring at the unfamiliar scent of rain-lashed foliage and saline ocean breezes. Here, they would make their stand. The landing site. A glade of bioluminescent grasses and crystalline rock served as their first camp. Lieutenant Drax and Sergeant Lynn disembarked, hauling supply crates and assembling a makeshift perimeter with Naven's drone-borne sensor buoys. The air thrummed with cicada-like calls, punctuated by distant thunder, a planet alive in every sense. Ravager unfurled its great frame and padded into the underbrush, testing the ground with massive claws. Kara followed, boots sinking slightly into the soft loam. She knelt, drawing a shallow pattern in the earth. 2 interlocking rings, the symbol of their bond. "Here," she whispered, "we rebuild." Ravager pressed its head against her shoulder, rumbling agreement. Building the sanctuary. Over the next fortnight, they transformed the glade into a fortress of survival and hope. Naven rigged solar harvest panels to the crystalline outcrops. Drax erected communal shelters fashioned from hardened canopy fibers. Lynn carved training rings into natural clearings. Kara oversaw every detail, her leadership as precise as it had been in the station's gauntlet. Recruits, refugees from betrayed colonies, misfits cast out by the Corps, arrived in trickles. Each bore scars, a missing limb, haunted eyes, distrustful posture. But when they met Ravager, those fears melted away. The beast would lower its head, offering a gentle nuzzle, and Kara would teach them, Strength is earned by trust, not fear. Under her guidance, they practiced drills borrowed from the frontier corps and modified for the planet's terrain. Stealth maneuvers through dripping ferns, hand-to-claw combat training alongside Ravager, and tactical simulations against holographic projections of core assault drones. Each success bound the recruits more tightly into a new order, one that honored life even as it prepared to defend it. Trials of leadership. But peace was fragile. Scouts reported an incoming patrol from Cerulean Station's loyalist fleet, sent to reclaim Ravager and punish the rebels. Kara gathered her circle beneath the glow of bioluminescent vines tethered between crystalline pillars. Elysia Major isn't just a refuge, she said, voice steady in the torchlight. It's our bulwark. If they break us here, they will sow fear across the rim. She pointed to a hollow map of the surrounding valleys. We'll set traps in the ravines, deploy sensor nets in the river mouths, and rely on Ravager's senses to give us an early warning. When the patrol arrived, sleek corvettes cutting through storm clouds, the rebels were ready. Ion-charged nets tangled the lead ship's engines. Plasma harpoons sheared its communication arrays. Ravager and Kara led a lightning strike on the mired boarding squad, routing them before they could set foot on the planet. The Loyalists retreated, battered and humiliated. In the aftermath, as the skies cleared and the shoreline caught the sun's first rays, recruits cheered. Kara stood on a rise above the glade, Ravager at her side, and felt something swell in her chest. Not pride in victory, but in the family they had forged. These were not soldiers obeying orders. They were comrades bound by purpose. Legacy and legend months passed. Elysia Major buzzed with life. Terraced gardens fed the camp. Libraries of salvaged data streamed knowledge to eager minds, and Ravager's den became a place of pilgrimage where new recruits came to pledge their oaths. Kara's teachings spread beyond the glade. Clandestine transmissions to other disaffected worlds invited them to join the burgeoning movement. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in bruised purples and gold, Kara climbed to the summit of the crystalline hill. She gazed at the distant outline of the Vega Mountains and the dark shimmer of Cerulean Station's orbiting beacon, a reminder of all they'd left behind. Ravager padded up beside her, placing a heavy paw on her boot. Kara knelt and met the beast's amber gaze. "We did it, old friend," she murmured. "We're more than fugitives. We're founders of something new." Ravager rumbled softly, a contented, throaty vibration that Kara felt in her bones. Below them, the camp's lights flickered on as night descended. Men and women of every species and every stripe gathered around communal fires, sharing stories of loss and hope. Children, wild-haired and bright-eyed, played near the water's edge, unafraid of the world beyond. Kara rose and stretched out her arms to the sky. "Tomorrow," she vowed, "we chart our own course. We answer to no one but our conscience." Ravager's roar echoed back, as if the planet itself had taken up her declaration. And so, on the unclaimed world of Elysia Major, the legend of Kara Miles and her apex guardian was born, not as a weapon of conquest, but as sovereigns of two worlds, human and beast, united by trust, freedom, and the enduring promise that even in the ideal darkest frontier, hope can be forged like steel and tempered by loyalty.